Red Bull have stumbled themselves into the perfect storm. That's not to say that they themselves have been perfect, far from it. All the goodwill built from Suzuka, I think it's all slipping away. Look, listen, Red Bull, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. The Spanish Grand Prix might be Red Bull's worst weekend this year. Possibly even worse than last year's Hungary PR disaster. A tyre mix-up and giving a place back too early left Verstappen frustrated, exposed rare operational lapses, and then reignited money for seat speculation regarding Tsunoda. Oh, Verstappen's shove regarding Russell? No, that was his own doing. And it all coming around a season so far plagued with glitches that have something to do with the pit lane. And it's these little bits and pieces which go awry. That's where you're gonna get Mad Max. But hey, at least with the whole George thing, Max has gone on to admit that, yeah, that probably shouldn't have happened. It's not a full-blown apology, but it's a start. The standings tell the story, though. Verstappen now trails the top two in the drivers by a notable margin, and Red Bull sit fourth in the constructors, slowly falling behind Mercedes and Ferrari. Couple that with the Tsunoda-Honda narrative and mixed messages from Helmut, Marko and Christian Horner, the incident, it just underlines a team that suddenly feels brittle again after years of clinical execution and then a brief uptick in us thinking that maybe there might have been something going on for the better. I know that it's been de rigueur to be dunking on Red Bull lately, but I genuinely hope that they had done something which meant that the transformation they've been seeing with so many senior personnel leaving, but no. It seems like the old standards are coming back again. And the way the media is portraying it, it's almost like they want this to happen. They just don't believe Red Bull in anything they say. They just go, come on, just do what you're going to do. We know you're going to do it, so just do it, Christian. Yeah. And thusly, it's going to leave little room for sympathy or people believing there could be actual change. And to be clear, I've got nothing against Hannah Schmitz here, because her plan, the three-stopper, looked odds-on to be perfect had it not been for the safety car, and then the miscommunication surrounding the call for a fresh set of tyres, which was misunderstood by GP and the like. No, Hannah, she did a great job, so you're fine, Hannah, don't worry. The plan made sense, until Kimi's car blew up. But it was another glitch from the pits, another little slip-up. It paints a picture of a team struggling without the foundational figures that once kept it stable. Since 2009, Red Bull's core strength was operational sharpness and agility. That's now faltering. Yeah, they had a relatively lean spell in the middle of the 2010s, but that was mainly down to them running a power unit which Renault themselves later went on to admit they had underinvested in, the turbo hybrids, which became such a problem that they fell back so hard that now Renault, they're not even going to be making engines after this year. But here though, in 2025, Red Bull can't blame the engine for their woes, because Honda are doing just fine. And again, I keep saying this, it's the little things that will birth bigger consequences further down the line. It's not just the headlines of Max saying the car's not good enough, even though that is very important. It's also, well, what's Max supposed to do if he goes into the pits in one position, but then some kind of mistake with the lights, or using a reserve crew instead of the main crew in the pit stops, or then coming in and putting on the wrong tyre? Again? These kind of things will lose positions and makes Max's job all the harder. And when you put all of that together with all of the stuff that Christian has been saying over the last couple of years of stability, continuity, convergence, there doesn't seem to be any of that at Red Bull at the moment. It all just seems to be noise. I don't want noise, I want noise. There's now a situation where there doesn't really seem to be anyone to fill in the breach that has a degree of capability like we saw with Wheatley, with Newey, with Marshall et al. Granted, they are working really hard to fill in the gap. There has been a major shift in terms of their personnel structure. The results are really not reflecting what Verstappen really needs from the team when the car is really not at its best. He wants to try and go for a 5th world title in a row, but it is slipping away through these unfortunate maladies that are beyond Verstappen's control. And then, of course, his outburst didn't help. It kind of reminds me what happened with Norris and Spielberg, and how an act of impulse and then a mad dash back to the pits resulted in retirement. I still believe he shouldn't have booked it back to the pits as fast as he did. He might have been able to salvage a couple of points, and that's what Max did, and he got 10 points for his trouble. That rationale from Max deserted him in Spain. And now the headlines are coming back about Red Bull being in chaos, and they're getting incredibly creative, so I'm holding onto the spanner with both hands here. Because have you seen the take that Ralf Schumacher has been saying that maybe Max Verstappen is doing all of this deliberately, that he's sabotaging his own position in the championship so he can then break exit clauses or something? Yes, what has happened has put Red Bull in a bind in both championships, but to suggest that Max is willingly doing this when he is pretty much the textbook definition of a world champion and a hungry world champion at that, no. Even Christian Horner didn't give it the time of day, because when asked about it, he just called it, "Oh, utter nonsense," shaking his head and then moving on. So even Horner, with his spin doctor ways, did not tolerate that whatsoever. So, Ralph, points for trying, but no, sorry. The fact is, though, these headlines do crop up, and they even get my attention, and everyone else's attention. And in my honest opinion, it's just making Red Bull look incredibly shaky, because with Mercedes, yeah, they had their little blip around Imola and Monaco, but they seemingly have recovered in Spain. They've got two drivers who are relatively drama-free, even though George Russell does like to stir the pot every now and again. Kimi, there's nothing wrong with him at the moment. And Ferrari, sure, Lewis Hamilton's not having a great time at the moment, but the car is starting to come back, which may benefit him in the long run. Charles Leclerc's on a tear. They're now second place in the constructors, somehow. And McLaren, I mean, what more is there to say? Well, I mean, okay, the Mercedes power unit is a bit of a cause for concern, so everyone's looking at when it'll be McLaren's turn to have an engine failure befall them. And Red Bull, they're looking relatively flimsy again. But what's been really exposed were 4 key fault lines. First, there's operational rust born from Jonathan Wheatley's departure, as we have discussed. And it doesn't help that the former Red Bull sporting director, now the team boss of Sauber, is in a position where he is on equal footing with Christian Horner and empowered to clap back at his comments, especially steward-related comments, and these are really, really pointed ones, and this is going to be real big fireworks to see, because all the stuff that Wheatley knows about Horner and how he operates, he knows that Christian inside and out. So the next few years, when they're together on the same platform, it's going to be spicy, because there'll be moments where Christian goes, and then Wheatley goes like, no. And these comments regarding stewards, this is within Wheatley's wheelhouse, people. He knows everything there is to know about how stewards operate. Because in the wake of the kerfuffle regarding Russell at turn 1, Horner suggested the FIA make decisions in real time to stop teams second-guessing the stewards. Wheatley, now free to push back against his old boss, did so. His defense of the FIA cited that the stewards have improved in recent years and are juggling several things at once, and underlining an uncomfortable truth for his old team. Fixing the operational basics is inside their control, whilst bemoaning stewards is not. And unless Red Bull is willing to tighten up those basic fundamentals, then situations that we saw with Verstappen are more likely to resurface than they are not to. Because we all thought that after Bahrain they would have learned a thing or two. Well, no, they haven't learned anything. And we are probably in a situation where it wouldn't be surprising that in the next few races we might see something else go down in the pit lane, unless there is major action to be had. And in terms of the stewards and decisions, this might just crop up again, whatever the FIA decides to do. And all this does as well is just expose Christian Horner as him being a guy who just likes to pass the buck instead of taking accountability. But seriously, in the light of this, do not sleep on Jonathan Wheatley. He is proving to be a really good team principal, him living out his long-term dream of being one. And Bortoleto, he actually got the fastest stop award at Spain, and can you imagine we would be saying that about Sauber after what they were doing 12 months ago? This team is really going places, and I will be dedicating my video tomorrow on this subject, so do subscribe to the channel for when that drops so you get to see it immediately, and maybe turn on notifications as well, because I'm really excited to be making that. Secondly, what Spain proved is that even though the RB21 might have improved since the start of the year, it's still incredibly patchy. We're not quite sure where it is in terms of the pecking order. Because at circuits like Japan and Imola, it can do what Max wants it to do, and what he does best, win. Then at some other tracks, it becomes a little bit harder to do so, and then you can maybe just expect a podium behind the McLarens, and then at some other circuits, it's got not even a chance, or you can barely get into the top 5. It's just, Max probably is equally frustrated with like, where is this car? Have they fixed it or not? It's certainly nothing like the RB19, whose only weaknesses were the Marina Bay curbs, but that wasn't really an issue for them at the time. It was only one track they had issues with, hardly a priority patch-up. Well, that aged well, didn't it? What with the Imola curbs and the RB20. And as for the technical directive, the one that Red Bull had been pushing for to stop the domination of McLaren and bring them back into play so that Verstappen could be fighting for victory more often, well, that was a damn squib, because McLaren came away from this weekend with another 1-2, and it looked completely untroubled, even with the safety car restart. Both Piastri and Norris just scampered off. What this directive proved to us all is that McLaren were right. Their car is legal. Because the FIA's done everything in their power to really dig deep into the MCL 39 to find something wrong with it, and have come up with bupkis. They went to forensic levels with the whole cooling of the brake system. They provided documents to the teams to prove that it's still legit, and has actually given them a little bit of a clue as to what to do with developing. So McLaren had to give away some of their secrets, I think, just to make sure that they weren't in trouble, to comply, to just go, hey, FIA, come on in. Would you like a cup of tea while you wait? And I'll just park up a chair there. Here's everything you need to know. Our car is still good. And the car is good. So everyone now has just got to deal with it. Either come up with a fix for yourself, or just maybe give up or something. That's what McLaren would like you to do. So all the hubbub that Christian Horner has been enacting for several months now to bring McLaren back toward them without them having to come up with their own innovation, because, well, there might not be one, or at least there's not enough time before next year because they've got that to worry about as well, and the powertrain of theirs, then it's come up with nothing. In fact, in maybe some circles, it's made the situation even worse. Like with Mercedes complaining about the porpoising, asking for a technical change, they got it, and then they were in an even worse situation. So Red Bull, I think, have run out of options in that front, so they've just got to deal with the RB21 and just do what Max told them to do. Fix the damn car! Because Max views it as a fundamental problem. Bumps and curbs knock the floor off that platform, so low-speed tracks like Monaco magnify the weakness. Max and Yuki report chronic mid-corner understeer instantly turning to exit snap. Proof the RB21 remains sensitive to every clampdown until its operating range is genuinely widened. And you can sense that they pinned their hopes on this technical directive to stop everyone else from maybe pelling away even more, to get them level pegging again. Well, no, because Max has been telling them that it's okay. It does not need the RB21 to be tailor-made perfectly just for him. He's such a generational talent that he can just jump into any car and go fast, be right up at the top, and then eventually, within a few hours, be at the top. Look what happened around the Green Hell in that GT3. He then goes and breaks the track record around the Nürburgring. You don't have to worry about Max, he can make it work. You just need to focus on the second driver, so that means both drivers are firing on all cylinders and providing valuable data and information to then make the car even more agreeable. That's not happening right now. They're reverting to type again. The tunnel vision that we talked about with Pierre Vacher, it's happening again! So with that, we'll get to point number 3. Yuki Tsunoda and the Honda stuff, and how it's now looking less and less like it was a genuine promotional merit, and Red Bull just needed the money. And then Honda, they're just left on the sidelines and go like, with the wider world already condemning the driver, sharpening the knives for his sacking imminently, the words that we heard around the Japanese Grand Prix when he made his debut for Red Bull Racing, they're looking increasingly hollow. Did Red Bull really mean what they said in promoting Yuki on merit? Were they really going to make the car more flexible? Well, no, seemingly not really. Because as we keep hearing from Christian as well, that they're giving up on the constructors, they're putting all their eggs in the Verstappen basket, again, leaving the second driver hung out to dry, and then costing them their reputation. They're once again relying on Max to do all the heavy lifting and do their job for them, to try and salvage something the constructors, because let's not forget, a couple of years ago we kept on talking about how Max could win the Constructors' Championship by himself, and arguably, when you look at the Constructors' table now, and where both Piastri and Norris, either one of those two could be leading the Constructors right now. Doesn't matter which, both of them. So even though Lando is looking the less stable compared to Piastri, he's still looking incredibly solid when compared to Max. It's still a tremendously positive season for Norris, because Norris would have bitten your hand off if you told them that this was going to happen last year. So with Yuki floundering with a car that he simply can't get a handle on over a single lap, and the problem not seemingly being resolved in due course, him not even on the same spec of machine as Max now, the narrative's now pointing toward a cynical reasoning as to why he got promoted. That supposed Honda cash injection of around $10 million, as well as the drowning of Liam Lawson and the contract funny games between the team and his management. It's all rather complicated, and not something born from merit at all, rather than convenience and playing silly buggers with the Kiwi. These questions around Yuki's future are questions that should not be coming up. This is not entirely his problem, and you might be thinking that I'm biased towards Tsunoda, but I still cling on to the understanding that I've been saying for, what, coming up to a couple of years now, since I'd maybe predicted that Yuki would get the call up. If it doesn't work out for him, it doesn't work out for him. So long as Red Bull gave him a go, I didn't mind what happened next. Especially since Marko, around Tsunoda's promotion, said that there would be no more driver changes afterward, to steady the ship, which had been incredibly rocky at the start of the year. However, that stance of stability and continuity has shifted, and once again reminded us of the disconnect between Marko and Horner, which sort of inspired today's video. Because Christian Horner reported in the team boss press conference before the Spanish race took place, and before Tsunoda qualified P20 after he experienced a strange issue in single lap qualifying, which was somewhat rectified for the race, but, still, these words, they did age like fine wine, admittedly. Christian initially joked and aped Briatore's disinclination to answer questions and said laughably, "I don't want to answer that." I think that's a bit of a half-truth. I think he genuinely didn't want to answer that. But anyway, here is what he said for your consideration. Look, it's early days for Yuki. He's still settling in. He's been in Q3, scored points. He scored points from the pit lane. He's had a few incidents as well, so he has a long way to go. We'll decide. We've got plenty of time on our side. I think the only thing that we can do is give him, Tsunoda, time and support and try and get a setup that he's got confidence in. Driving these cars is all about confidence, and that's what he needs to find. I think he'll get there. He's fast. He's just got to piece it all together. We keep seeing flashes of performance. We just need to see him put it all together. I think he's capable of that. It now just makes Marko's comments from not that long ago look like damage control instead of a genuine assertion after the Lawson-Tsunoda swap. Now it's, that's a certainty. That line was said to get the press and the fans to stop shouting at them for just a minute. It's yet more mixed messages. But inside Red Bull, this is probably normal. Marko says one thing, Horner says another thing. But I'm not saying that Yuki is completely blameless. He does need to come up with some kind of a result, because if he doesn't, these questions are going to keep coming up. And even though my polls have been saying that you, the fans, are perfectly happy and understanding of where Yuki is right now, that there is a second Red Bull seat curse, the media doesn't really seem to think that way. And the progress of Isaac Hadjar is really not helping either, because he's been able to get into Q3 in arguably the slower car, even though it's not that much slower. In fact, in Spain, in terms of qualifying at one point, Hadjar was only a 10th behind Verstappen. And Isaac scoring 4 times in the last 5 races. That consistency, that continuity is something that Red Bull will be taking note of. They will be looking at that, and I really hope they don't do anything this year. Please don't. Because all this is going to do is make the Isaac Yuki talk just happen more and more and more. It's quite evident that what they promised to do around Suzuka, that they would extend the operating window to make it a little bit more pliable in terms of setups. That means Yuki doesn't have to go all in with the setup or narrow window that Max has got, and they run out of time trying to find the setup in practice. That's easily fallen short, or they've just completely given up on it. That there's no point. Don't worry about the constructors. I'll forget about Yuki. Just leave him to rot, pocket the money Honda gave you, and then make sure Max doesn't get mad at us again. Well, you're failing at that one too, mate, because Max is definitely mad at you. Because even though Yuki can do something with the car when it's laden with fuel, over a course of a single lap, he is clearly struggling. He just doesn't know what to do at this point. He can't explain why he's so slow. And there's nothing that Honda can do about it, because they've pulled back in terms of managing Tsunoda. In fact, they don't manage Yuki at all. They're just a benefactor at this point. They've left Yuki to his own destiny, which does mean that he can be more agile when it comes to discussions with other teams. But it does mean that in terms of support and backup at Red Bull Racing, Yuki's on his own now, because Honda, well, they've not got a leg to stand on anymore. They've not got any leverage. And yeah, I'm just going to have to get the foam out here, even though it's a bit cynically tinged. I just feel like once the check cleared from Honda, Red Bull suddenly got a little bit, questionable when it came to their commitments. As in, Honda goes, when can we see Yuki get the same car as Max? That is the big question! Because Honda kicking the can means Tsunoda can't relax, and that's not going to help him settle down and find a solution now, will it? I can imagine that Honda aren't thrilled either to hear that the seat is still under review, even though Red Bull had promised to commit Yuki for the rest of the year. But their engine deal ends at the end of this year, so what does it matter to Christian and Red Bull? They got what they wanted from Honda, and Honda isn't about to get petty and withhold things from the team, now will they? Because they're moving to Aston Martin next year. They need to make sure they keep up appearances and that they are committed, they're dependable, and they're not going to be doing anything petty if things get a little bit shaky or icy in a relationship. Because I doubt that Papa Stroll will take too kindly to that, so Honda have got to be on their best behaviour if they want to have any sort of leverage that they really want at Aston Martin regarding driver lineups or anything else related to Newey's development of the car. And Yuki, he's not promised a seat for next year at all. So therefore, it's up to him to show us what he's got. And it really doesn't help that Isaac's been taking names with Racing Bulls and proving Red Bull right that they were right to drop Liam Lawson at the very least, and Racing Bulls are now looking odds-on to be getting that 6th place in the Constructors, especially if Isaac keeps on scoring points consistently, because I set a goal for Isaac of 30 points to maybe lock in his medium-term Red Bull future. If he can get 50 with Racing Bulls and lock in 6th place, because I think 5th place might be a bit of a tall order for 2 rookies, then I think he'll get the promotion straight up, because 50 points in that car? Wow. Then fourthly, the team seriously needs to do something about the messaging going on between the special advisor and the team principal, especially when the team is going through something of a crisis. Yet by Monaco, he was already not ruling out another driver shakeup. At Barcelona, Horner stood on the same stage and said the team still had plenty of time to decide on Tsunoda's future. The mixed signals, they're typical, but they must stop, because when talks surrounded an exit clause for Verstappen, Marko did admit that it was entirely possible. And then, regarding the bulletproof defense of Max Verstappen, even Helmut couldn't defend Max regarding what happened with George, saying he had no idea what was going through Max's head at the time, questioning the champion's thought process. Now, that is saying something. Helmut does not do that. Whereas Horner was defending GP, saying that what they did in giving George the place back originally was to avoid a harsher penalty. Well, they got the penalty anyway, because Max was seeing red after all of the stuff that Red Bull had done to him throughout the course of that race, and maybe throughout everything else that had been going on throughout the back end of the season. What with Miami, the unsafe release, costing Verstappen places in the sprint, Bahrain, the tyre strategy there, and then the pit lights being delayed so they got 4-second pit stops when every single second is vital. There have been some major situations where Verstappen has lost probably at least a dozen points because of what happened beyond his control. And then arguably, because of what happened in Spain, he lost even more. But realistically, Marko and Horner shouldn't be just sounding off against each other. They should be really set with their responsibilities because they're clear. Marko should focus on the junior team and make sure Arvid Lindblad stays true on course to being a definite title contender, and he's going to be getting a promotion next year, so prepare him for that. And Horner should be really focused on making sure that Red Bull's day-to-day operations remain solid. End of. What more needs to be said? But I think it's safe to say that Red Bull's aura, it looks well and truly cracked after what looked like a genuine restoration process the last couple of months with Yuki's promotion. It's all become undone. It just doesn't feel genuine. It feels like lip service. That, no, they didn't promote Yuki because they believed in him. They promoted him because, well, they had to fill in the seats somehow, and also, they wouldn't say no to an extra bit of money from Honda before they left. All because 3 fronts collided at once at the Spanish Grand Prix. First, the pit wall perfection that Jonathan Wheatley drilled for 19 years left with him, which has fed Max's growing frustration more than the car underperforming, arguably. Second, the FIA clampdowns on front wing flex did not do them any favours. In fact, you could argue it made it worse. And third, the people story has turned toxic again. Yuki's promotion looking more money-driven rather than driver-driven. Combine that with all of the stuff regarding Verstappen's exit clauses, the departures of Marshall, Wheatley and Newey to name even more, but they, the big 3, are very important to this story, and a fragile RB21 where you really don't know where it's going to be every single weekend, then the perfect storm is fully formed. Until they fix the operations trackside, make sure they actually improve the operating window of the car, so that means anyone can just jump in and drive it to the best of their ability, and speak with one voice, truly, really, them, Marko and Horner sticking to their own lanes, the team just have no sense of direction, and they're just trying to weather the storm instead of just trying to power through the storm. A storm which I think Aston Martin is finding themselves in too. Lance Stroll's injury sustained 2 years ago is rearing its ugly head once more, and could wind up being the thing that sees him out of F1. To find out why Lance and Aston Martin are in a pickle of their own doing, I think, watch this video next, straight after this one.